The U.S. has seized 2 sanctioned oil tankers linked to Venezuela, keyword linked. Officials say the tankers were in violation of U.S. sanctions and embargo on Venezuela. You're seeing video of the ship seized in the Caribbean right now, right there on your screen. Officials say the other ship was captured in the North Atlantic and was flying, the U.S. contends, illegitimately a Russian flag. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said today's actions are part of a three-phase plan for Venezuela.
We are in the midst right now and, in fact, about to execute on a deal to take all the oil. They have oil that is stuck in Venezuela. They can't move it because of our quarantine and because it's sanctioned. We are going to take between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil. We're going to sell it in the marketplace at market rates.
CBS News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent and moderator of Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan, joins me now. Margaret, help us understand what's gone on today. It's a big task. I lay it right at your...
Make sense of it.
Yes.
Well, what you heard the Secretary of State try to describe as this fully baked three-phase plan is a plan that's coming together here. But what they aim to do is to use the proceeds from these sales to carry out the plan they say is coming to rebuild the country. Now, that's not yet where we are. Those seizures and what he calls an oil quarantine are meant to cut off the existing regime. Because remember, the existing regime is still in control.
Right.
In fact, the person who controls the security forces is still in office, who is incredibly repressive, wanted by U.S. law enforcement and under sanction. And then the person who controls the military is also still in power. So what the U.S. is doing is really first trying to cut off their financial lifeline, which is then going to, as Secretary Rubio said, they're going to take the oil and sell it. But this is really very much in transition. If the United States was really in control of Venezuela right now, why are there Americans still sitting in detention facilities there?
Right.
If America's actually in control right now, why is the main conduit to the cartels and the main conduit to the Russians and other adversaries still in power? So they are really trying to get control by doing these seizures.
You mentioned Russia. They had some commentary about what happened today because they very recently registered and recognized one of these vessels as a Russian-flagged vessel. The United States considers that an illegitimate act. What does this suggest, and what should we be watching for?
Well, as I heard you say rightly there, J.D. Vance, the vice president, said it wasn't a real declaration by Russia. I'm not sure exactly what he's disputing there, because the Russian government did say that they
they put out a statement to the effect of that today.
Exactly, they did. But it does set up for more of a complicated power play here than you would necessarily take away from some of the remarks in the Trump administration to date. Russia is deeply, deeply involved in Venezuela, invested, in fact. And we've heard very little from the Trump administration about how they plan to expel them. You've heard them talk more about Iran and China. We haven't heard the new Venezuelan government actually say they're going to do any of that. The new Venezuelan government is the same old Venezuelan government that was completely dependent on them. So that is where we're kind of stuck. What I think stands out to me from what Marco Rubio laid out, the Secretary of State today, in this three-phase plan, is that it is not a 6-month plan. It is not a 6-week plan. That is, at minimum, a year and a half to 2 years before you can actually go ahead and get a transition to a new government happening. He threw out there as point 2 this idea of recovering and rebuilding Venezuela, calling for all the political prisoners to be released and for the opposition to come back home. I guess we're supposed to take from that they will be part of a new transition to a new government. Who guarantees that when those exiles go home, they're not slaughtered by the security chief who's still in power? And
Margaret, very quickly, where does this leave the opposition, Maria Corina Machado?
That's who's wondering, can I go home? Will you guarantee my safety if I go home?
And have I been left out in the cold by the rhetoric of the Trump administration?
Who has not said the word democracy to date in terms of that transition. I pressed the Secretary of State about that repeatedly on Sunday. A transition to what? And this democratic election, who will it include? Because if the opposition is to return and to build and campaign, they need to, first of all, feel they can safely do that. And who guarantees that? Is it Donald Trump saying, listen, Minister of the Interior, if you lay a hand on this person, I will have a problem with you? And how do they win the support of the business community, which, by the way, is such a huge factor here in everything that is happening in terms of ensuring access to oil resources now and in the future? That is the other entity we're not talking about enough.
And they seemingly, at least initially, appear to be betting on the remnants of the existing regime staying in power and negotiating with the Trump administration, not the opposition.
The predictable, right. And the thing hanging over the head is not just the oil seizures, but also the threat of military force to go do another snatch and grab of the Interior Minister, Cabello.
Margaret Brennan, brilliant as always. Thank you so much.
Good to talk to you.